Black Monday ain't what it used to be. That's because dudes ain't just getting fired on Monday no more. Now it's like a Black Friday or Monday, extendo clip. We could go all week long before some of these dudes find out their fate. Another prominent coach bites the dust today. We'll talk about that. We're still awaiting a word on what's going to happen to Bill Belichick. We still don't know what's going on in Chicago with Matt Eberflus. Normally, we would know by Black Monday. That's why it was called Black Monday. But this is turning into a week-long event. Monday is still significant, but not as significant as it once was. We will discuss changes that have been made to this point, looming changes that could be coming, and what all of that means. National championship game is now in the rearview mirror, which now officially starts the clock on the college offseason, which now starts the clock really for the NFL evaluating portion of the season. So that's about to be underway. Some takeaways, the biggest takeaways from the Natty last night. All of that and more here on the 387th installment of the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be? But me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 387th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Got a nice little show for y'all on deck today. Got some, as a fan, this is some fan somber news. Nothing major. Get off of the stream I did last night after the national championship game. That was a fun stream. And I opened my phone up, and to my surprise, Ja Morant done for the season, shoulder surgery. And we had just beaten the Suns the night before, and my buddy is a Suns fan. We had talked about the game prior to it taking place. And he said to me, if I could just get one of your dudes out like Ja, I feel good about that. Because KD hadn't played the game before for the Suns. So I was like, is KD playing? He was like, I think all my dudes playing. I'm like, well, if KD don't play, we going to beat y'all. He was like, and I feel the same way. If Ja don't play or somebody don't play, I'm going to get y'all. I said, well, we should be straight. You know, we not playing a back-to-back. Everybody played the night before. No injuries of recollection in that game. So you're thinking everything's straight. And then we get to Sunday, no Ja. And I'm like, interesting. He's in a sling. And they asked, Coach Jenkins about it. And he's like, yeah, we just wanted to play it safe. We'll get some further evaluations done. We'll know more about it next week. So I'm like, okay. Doesn't sound too alarming, right? That's what you do when somebody sprains their ankle. You want to get further tests done. You just put them in a walking boot just to be safe, right? Okay. Then we find out he's got a sublux, which is when your joint pops in and out of the socket, and he's going to require surgery. And I remember telling my buddy that I was furious when he first came back and we won that first game, and Kenyon Martin was on the Gil's Arena podcast. And he was dismissive of us. Like, we couldn't get to the 10 seed and get into the play-in and then play our way in. I'm like, he must not know who we are. They were talking about us, and this is how I know like they watch the league, but they really don't watch the league because they were talking about us like we were just trash, like we didn't have anybody but Ja, like Jaren Jackson Jr., like Tripp, like Dez don't exist. We were banged up, and we have been banged up. And I was furious. I'm like, we're gonna make the playoffs, and we're gonna shove that shit in everybody's face that don't think we can make it. It's gonna be tough. But you just got to get to the 10 seed. It ain't like how it used to be where you got to get to the 8. We just got to get to the 10 seed. We can do the rest because we don't belong here, right? But then I listened to JJ Redick's pod, and he was like, here's why it's going to be tough for Memphis. They're going to have to win. And he threw out a number. Like, this is what they'll have to go the rest of the way to get to 40. I think he said 40, 42 and 40. And he threw out a number. And it was pretty robust. It's like 33 and 13 down the stretch or something like that. Or 33 and 20 or something like that to get, which was doable in my mind. But he said, this is why it's going to be tough on Memphis. Because they're going to have to stay healthy. Something we hadn't done all season long. We came into the year banged up. Guys kept getting banged up throughout the year. We're already down 2 bigs for the entire season. And now add Ja Morant to that list. And that was the thing that when he said that, I said, you know what? You're right. I don't know if this team can stay healthy. And we haven't been healthy all year long. And, this might end up being a blessing in disguise, right? Because what it could ultimately do is have us be in a position that we have no business being in, which is in a position to get a good draft pick and get a good player potentially that can help this team in the future, right? Otherwise, wouldn't be in that position unless we traded or did something crazy. We might mess around with and get a lottery pick this year. Who knows? We'll see. Having Ja back gave the rest of the team a spark. And knowing that even that he didn't play against the Suns, knowing that he was coming back, they still went out there and played hard and won. Now knowing he's not coming back might be the death blow for this team. And you might see us go back to the way we were when the season started, when we were 6-19 or whatever it was. We were 13-23. We were getting our shit together. But we'll see what happens. Either way, the way I view it, we'll be back, hopefully, healthy and intact next year with Brandon Clark. Big Kiwi will be back next year. We hope. This is 2 years in a row he's missed a large chunk of the season. This entire year he's going to miss. And then last year he missed a huge chunk of the season, I think pretty much right before the All-Star break all the way through the rest of the season. So getting him back, getting Brandon Clark back, getting Ja back, and then having all these other guys like Marcus Smart, and hopefully we can get Derrick Rose to stay somewhat healthy, but he's 35 years old at this point. He's here more so of in a mentor role than anything else. But just getting these guys acclimated, getting them integrated into what we do. Vince Williams has been huge for us this year, and he'll get more, run now, and some of those young guys will continue to get experience, and it may ultimately help us. Guys getting more minutes and playing more out of necessity. It may turn out to end up making these guys better players when we're actually ready to win something. So anyway, I digress. Let's get to the gem dropping session, shall we? Yeah, let's do that. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T double E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So Black Monday came and went, and it was kind of ho-humish. We had already seen 3 teams fire their coaches in season, so that took away some of the Black Monday luster. Carolina had been the first team in the league to fire their coach. The Raiders then followed suit, And then afterwards, the Chargers got rid of their head coach. And so just like that, you had 3 vacancies. There were coaches that we expected to be fired at season's end. Ron Rivera was definitely at the top of that list. He felt like dead man walking in terms of his head coaching career. Most people assumed Belichick would be done. Like, it was a done deal. I remember watching that Jets game because as a Commanders fan, we wanted the Patriots to beat the Jets in week 18 to solidify the number 2 overall pick. And when the Patriots, I think they turned it over on their last possession, or either that or Breece Hall broke a big run for a touchdown. That's what happened. They went for it on 4th down. They didn't get it. And like 2 plays later, Breece Hall broke a touchdown run and slid in the snow and started doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And they weren't coming back already. It was like 13-3 already. They weren't coming back already. The game was already over. It might have been 13-6 at that time. And then him scoring a touchdown, they weren't going to score a touchdown. The Patriots were hopeless in that game. And Robert Kraft got up out of his seat. He looked pissed, tapped his son like, come on, man, let's go. We don't need to watch the rest of this shit. And I remember thinking to myself, this is it for Belichick. It's over, bro. He looked just as mad as he did when the Patriots lost to the Colts over in Germany. That was the first time where I realized, oh, shit, this is really over. Like, he was hot when they lost to because the Colts at that time, even though they had been playing solid football, it's Gardner Minshew, and they were ass in that game. I mean, Mac Jones was so bad, and I think the score ended up being like 13-6 or some crazy 13-7 or some nonsense. I mean, it was a bad game. It was one of the worst games I watched all season. And the Patriots had no business losing that game. And Mac Jones threw one of the most egregious interceptions you will ever see in your life. And they lost at the end. And Kraft was pissed. I just remember that. And so I thought, yeah, Belichick's done. You know, I don't know how this is going to turn out, whether Belly's going to be like, I quit, which that doesn't do him any good because I don't know what the contract situation looks like. But if you want the rest of your bread, you don't quit. Like, it's funny because people were saying at the end of Rivera's situation, he should just quit. Nah, I need my extra year. Y'all still owe me whatever, $8 million next year, whatever the number is. I need to collect my bread. So I'm not quitting. If I quit, I ain't getting my money. Because remember, Rivera had 1 more year left on his contract. He signed a 5-year deal. So I'm not quitting, right? And if I'm Belichick, I ain't quitting unless I'm done. If I'm retiring, that's different than quitting. Like, he wants to coach. So we heard yesterday that he is willing to relinquish that general manager type of power where he has final say on roster decisions and matters. And just really, at this point, the man is old. He's in his 70s. He shouldn't be handling all of that stuff anyway. You heard what our owner and managing partner, Josh Harris, said about the GM position or the head of football operations position and the head coaching position. He's like, both of those are 80-hour-a-week jobs. That means that shouldn't be filled by one man because no one man is working 160 hours in a week. So what are we talking about here? So I think Belichick understands that at this point, and he's not good, and he's never really been very good at it. Anyway, here's the thing, though. When you've been used to doing that for so long, you know the type of players that you are looking for in particular. Whereas a general manager might not see the upside in a Shea McClellan, who flamed out in Chicago, might not see the upside in a Kyle Van Noy, who wasn't very good for the Detroit Lions. He might not see that, but Bill Belichick might see him and say, that's the perfect piece that I need to make my defense better, right? He looks at Jabril Peppers and says, that's the perfect fit for my defense. Not that Jabril Peppers was trash or anything like that, but he can identify that guy that can play well in his scheme, right? He can look at Jalen Mills and say, hey, I could do something with Jalen Mills. He's the type of versatile defender that I covet, right? So he could take a guy that we would deem insignificant, bad fit for our team. He's trash. And Belichick is like, nah, this ain't trash. You discarding that? Let me get that. Let me dust that off. I could do something with that. His problem was he couldn't draft well worth a damn, right? So if he's willing to give up some of that control and make that concession, maybe there's reconciliation yet still in New England. So that decision is up in the air. We knew that the Chicago decision would be interesting with their head coach, Mike Eberflus. Eberflus finished up the season playing excellent football. His team was playing, really well. And defensively, that was the thing that might have given him a real shot to secure his job for another year, is that he's a defensive-minded guy. The defense had been struggling. He had to fire or move on from his defensive coordinator in season because of some crazy nonsense. And it feels like the defense just started to take. They started to figure out what this scheme is all about. And they were starting to play really well. And if you can carry that over into next year and get an upgrade offensively, whether it's, another year of Justin Fields and he's even better now, or you move on to somebody else and you get better play out of that position, whatever the case may be, this team could be really good. And that might be one of the decisions that they're mulling over right now. But he's not out of the woods yet. Eberflus could be fired tomorrow, tonight, Thursday, right? We don't know. We see these things happen sometimes where these situations kind of drag out a bit. And then there's Mike Vrabel, who I just never envisioned getting fired. I just didn't. And I watched Adam Schefter on the morning of the final week of the season, the final day of the regular season, on the NFL Sunday Countdown show on ESPN. And he did a segment that he said Morton Anderson used to love to do, and that was in or out. Which coaches were going to be in, which coaches were going to be out. Safe or out, I think is what it was called. And he went through a list of maybe like 7 coaches. And Mike Vrabel was up there along with Mike Tomlin. And I'm like, why are they here? These guys aren't going anywhere, right? Especially Tomlin, right? Had they missed the playoffs, and at that time, we didn't know that Jacksonville was going to go out and wet the bed and allow the Steelers into the postseason. I knew the Bills weren't losing, but I didn't anticipate Jacksonville losing either. That's why I didn't think Pittsburgh was going to the playoffs. And with Tomlin, he was like, yeah, nah, he's going to call his shot. He's not being fired. But with Vrabel, with Vrabel, it was like, he should be safe. Like, we'll see what happens in week 18, but Mike Vrabel should be safe in Tennessee. And then they went out and they won. They beat Jacksonville. They stopped them from making the playoffs. So my assumption was they finished off the season, inconsistent, but that's what you do when you were starting a young quarterback in Will Levis and you were in a transitional period. I don't really know what they were expecting the Titans to do. That's not a very good roster. So it's crazy that he was fired today, because just a year ago, he got the GM fired. Like, there was a power struggle and they chose Mike Vrabel over the GM. And then a year later, you fire Mike Vrabel. I'd make it make sense. And what's always with Tennessee in particular, it's always weird, right? Because every time they fire a coach, it's never cleanly done. It's shrouded in mystery, some kind of controversy. Like when they fired Mike Munchak, remember? It was thought to be a situation where they asked him, hey, you're going to have to make some coaching changes to your staff. And he was like, nah, I'm not doing that. It was like, if you don't fire your such and such, then you got to go. And he was like, well, bet then. Fire me. I still got 2-3 years left on my contract. Just pay me then. But I'm not firing my dudes. And then he got fired, right? Then the GM situation last year, which was just weird as hell. And they tried to deny it like it had nothing to do with A.J. Brown. But they literally went to Philadelphia. A.J. Brown put his nuts all over him, scored 2 touchdowns, would have been 3 if not for like a pass interference that called it back or a holding penalty or something that called it back, embarrassed them. And right after the game, they fired their GM. I find it hard to believe that there wasn't an internal discussion, probably Mike Vrabel being pissed off that this dude is, because Vrabel wanted A.J. Brown to be in Tennessee. He never wanted that deal to be done, right? He never wanted to trade him. And he's always been a player's coach. And he likes to take care of his guys, and he wanted to take care of A.J. Brown. And the GM decided, nah, we're not doing that. Traded him to the Eagles, went out and got Treylon Burks. He's been awful in his first 2 years, non-existent injuries, inconsistencies, etc., etc. Hell, there are months that go by where I forget he's even on their roster. And this is a first-round wide receiver we're talking about. So, needless to say, after that game, to me, it's not a coincidence. They move on from the general manager. They don't win another game the rest of the season. I don't think that's a coincidence either, though, right? And then this year, I don't really know what the expectation was. This is not a good roster. And yet, Vrabel had those boys competing. And then he made the switch to Will Levis, which he should have. Levis gets hurt late in the season. And you got to go back to Tannehill. You win. I don't know what happened after that. People asked the Titans, like, why you didn't trade him? Mike Vrabel has trade value as a coach. And they was like, nah, we don't want to drag this out. We want to get into the fray. We see Carolina, we see Washington trying to get their hands on all these coaches. We need to get into the mix before all the good ones are gone. So we just going to move on from them. Okay. So let's just be clear, though, and understand that the Titans have a new general manager. So, last year they got a new general manager and Rand Carthen. So understand that he had no ties to Mike Vrabel. So this is a situation where you want to get your guy, right? And that might be what this is all about. And this is why I always say it's usually best if you get a GM and he gets in there and you let him just pick his coach, because there could be strife there between the GM and the head coach as to roster building and what this roster should look like. Vrabel, like, look, these my guys. Let me rock with my dudes. And Rand Carthen is like, no. That dude is dead weight. Kevin Byard, they traded him. He's dead weight. And Derrick Henry ain't going to be back. And these are all Vrabel guys. And he's like, yo, y'all moving on from all my guys. If that's what you're going to do, just go ahead and let me go. So I'm interested to see what Rand Carthen does now, because this is not an attractive job. I don't know about you, but if I'm a prospective coach, now again, it's only 32 of these jobs that exist. Somebody's going to want to take this job. But if you made a list of jobs that are available, the Tennessee Titans job is pretty low on the totem pole. Like, if the Bears move on from Matt Eberflus, the Patriots move on from Bill Belichick, and we start ranking these openings, the Panthers are probably dead last because of their ownership situation and not having a first-round pick. But after them, I put Tennessee above them. Like, who wants that job? Will Levis looked good last year. Solid, I'll say. But you're not sold on necessarily him being the future of the quarterback position. I want to see more, though. He should be the starter going in to training camp and be given an opportunity to start. And they got to surround him with more weapons. But if there's no Derrick Henry, with Tajay Spears is just going to take over your running back position, like that roster offensively stinks. It needs a lot of work. That's a basic-ass NFL offensive roster. That's a shit show. The fact that Vrabel was able to do what he was able to do for as long as he was able to do it in Tennessee is a miracle. But I'm gonna see what happens there. That's interesting to me that they moved on from Mike Vrabel, to be honest with you. And now, where does Mike Vrabel go? Like, you're making a list of candidates. Vrabel has to go somewhere near the top of that list, right? Like, he's the white Mike Tomlin in the NFL. That's how we view him. Now, he's not as successful as Mike Tomlin. He does not have a Super Bowl ring, and he does have losing seasons. This year was a losing season, but he's one of those coaches similar to Tomlin that gets the most out of his roster. So, and when I say that about Tomlin, that's despite flaws in the coaching staff, potentially. You still find ways to win, even though you could do better from a staff as far as game planning and getting the ball to your best players, et cetera, et cetera. I assume Vrabel's going to end up somewhere. The question now is where. And I wonder how many more vacancies we're going to see actually open up. Because right now, technically speaking, we have 3 GM vacancies, right? Raiders, 4. Did the Chargers get rid of Tom Telesco? Yeah, they got rid of Tom Telesco too. So you got 4 GM vacancies. The Chargers, the Raiders, the Commanders, and the Panthers, right? So you got 4 GM vacancies, and then you got, I think, 5 head coaching vacancies or 6. So you got the Commanders, Raiders, Chargers, Panthers, Titans, Falcons. So you got 6 vacancies, head coach wise, 4 GM vacancies. And we could get to as high as 8 if Belichick is moved on from in New England and Eberflus is moved on from in Chicago. I don't see any surprise firings coming out of the blue or the woodworks. Those are the only 2 left to be decided at this point. And as the days pass and nothing happens, I usually feel more and more comfortable that coach is going to be retained. If you're going to make a move, the sooner the better. In the case of the Patriots, I get it. You want to do your due diligence with one of the greatest to ever do it. Figure out if there's a way that you guys can reconcile that situation and have him finish where he's supposed to finish. But for the Bears, I mean, it ain't that hard. Either you're going to keep Matt Eberflus or you're going to move on from him. But you need to get in the fray, right? You need to get in line with these prospective coaches to figure out if you're going to replace him, who's the best fit for Chicago. You don't want to wait. Now, granted, you can't talk to any of these dudes to the 22nd anyway, but I would assume that if I put in an interview request, you would honor my request first if it was first. Now, again, if I'm not interested in your job, I can blow you off. And if I'm more interested in the Chicago job and they hit me up 4th, I can still move them to the top of the list because that's my preference. So at the end of the day, maybe it doesn't matter. It's not like the NFL mandates that you take these interviews in the order in which they came. But I still think if you're going to move on from Matt Eberflus, you would just do it, right? Anyway, it's going to be interesting to see what happens because this year, the candidacy pool is the best I can remember it being in the last 5 to 7 years. Think about this. Last year, you were practically begging people to take jobs. Coaches, it was so bad. Dan Quinn was like, nah, I'm going to stay in Dallas. Like when a coordinator stays in a location, in a locale, and tells you some bullshit like, oh, nah, man, I want to see this thing through like Ben Johnson did with the Lions. That's not how coaches are wired. That's not how assistants are wired. You're not like, I want to see this through. Your main objective when you become a coordinator is to be a head coach. And when an opportunity presents itself that you're interested in, you're going to take it. So when you tell everyone, man, I really want to see this Lions thing through. They're working on something special over here. Translation, hey, these jobs are shit. These jobs are trash. I don't want the Panthers job. I don't want the Broncos job. I don't want, fill in the blank job. I don't want that job. I don't want the Texans job. I don't want the Cardinals job. I'm straight. I'm good. And I didn't blame anybody for not wanting any of those jobs. The GM jobs too. The Titans and the Cardinals were both turned down at least twice for their GM openings. They made an offer to a GM, and he was like, Adam Peters in particular was like, nah, I'm good on both of those. Nah, I'm going to pass, man. Thanks, though. I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to pass. A little different this year. And the coaching pool, honestly, with those teams, I was like, it ain't really shit out here. It was Sean Payton. That was it. This year, it's different because Bobby Slowick has come out of nowhere, and what he's done is going to garner attention. We know what Ben Johnson has been and is again this year, and so his stock is as high as it's going to get. Obviously, off the strength of what we just saw from DeMeco Ryans in Houston, now defensive coordinators are back in vogue, right? Because the NFL is a copycat league, and so whatever's hot, whatever's trending, that's what's going to be the wave. And so for a while there, once Sean McVay hit the airwaves and did what he did, and then Zach Taylor followed it up with 2 straight AFC championship games with Joe Burrow, everybody's like, I got to go get me one of them. I'm going to get me one of them. Oh. So at some point, there needed to be a defensive dude to come in and flip the script. In comes DeMeco Ryans. Now people are looking at defensive coaches with a different eye. Like, for instance, if you're a Commanders fan, you should be somewhat worried if you were really looking for the offensive-minded guy to be the choice. We got more defensive coordinators and defensive guys that we've requested for an interview than offensive coaches at this point. Which I'm not upset about. I'm just like, hey, just get it right. That's all I care about. Just get it right. But you know what my preference is. But when you look around, as I mentioned already, you've got Bobby Slowick, you've got Ben Johnson, but then you go on the defensive side, Mike McDonald and what he's done in Baltimore, incredible. Dan Quinn is like, yo, I'm going to take some interviews this year. I like the jobs that are available. I'm going to take some interviews this year. He's probably one of the hottest coaches right now for what he's done for that Dallas defense the last 3 years. Jim Harbaugh is probably going to leave Michigan. Now, again, we can see Michigan could sweeten the pot, but they've already said, bro, if you sign this contract, you can't leave. You can't leave. So they've already told him, hey, we got the money, bro. Look, we just won a national championship. You've beaten Ohio State 3 years in a row. Bro, we got all the bread. We got all the boosters. We got as much money as you can throw at a college coach. That's not the issue. What you're not going to do is play on our head top every year and be dancing around the idea of leaving us to go to the NFL. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this clause in this contract that states, if you sign this deal, you can't leave. You good with that? And Jim's like, bro, I never stay anywhere longer than 8 years. No, I'm not good with that. I'm about to bounce. He's coming to the NFL. So that's another high-profile candidate in a pool of candidates that are just, these waters are just buzzing with all kinds of high-profile, top-notch candidates that you're excited about. It's a lot of these dudes. And it's not a ton of jobs. If everybody wants a job, and then what happens? Now you throw Vrabel into the mix, right? Now he gets into that mix. If Belichick's moved on from, and he wants to coach, I assume he gets into that mix. This is a really impressive pool of candidates, and it's only I just said 6 jobs available. We could literally have it this time around where last year you couldn't you couldn't make a coach take a job. They want a job this year and can't get one because there's so many dudes out here. So it's a good time to be in a position to need a head coach or a GM. I'll just say that. We picked the right offseason to want to make this thing, remake our entire, front office and organization. Anyway, I'm going to be following this coaching carousel very closely to see what happens. I wonder who the first domino is going to be. Because I've heard that Harbaugh is only interested in really staying on the left coast. I brought this up last night on the post-game show of the national championship game. But I see him as a West Coast guy. He coached at the University of San Diego. He coached at Stanford. He coached with the San Francisco 49ers. And so the left coast has been, the coast of choice for him. Now, obviously, alma mater is Michigan. So he went back there. He also played in the Midwest when he was with the Chicago Bears and the Indianapolis Colts, probably most notably the Cardiac Colts back in '95, where they went all the way to the AFC Championship game and came within a Hail Mary of making it to the Super Bowl. So my guess is he's cool with being in the Midwest, but really his heart is out West. And the Raiders and the Chargers jobs are the two jobs that really interest him. So, and if I'm the Raiders, and let me just say this, I'm not moving on from Antonio Pierce. I learned my lesson already. But sometimes these owners, they don't really see what's right in front of them. They want the shiny object. It should be about substance and less about flash in the pan. And Antonio Pierce has brought substance to your roster. He's brought accountability. He's got guys believing in what he's selling. That's more important than anything else you can do. We'll see what happens. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to social media maneuvers. I'm a midday marauder. You know what it is. Y'all know how this works. Y'all get to take over the show, essentially. You want to have your comment read on the air. Super chats are the best way to do so. Use the hashtag LouieTeeLive to have your comment read on the air if it is pertinent and time permits. I can't guarantee you that I'm going to get to your comment. If you want to ensure that I get to it, however, super chats are the way to get it done. So we'll finish up the show talking about some of the biggest takeaways from the national championship, because I think obviously the quarterback position is the hot button topic. Quarterback is always hot button, especially when, the two quarterbacks in the game have a chance to potentially come out and be, talked about as top 5 quarterbacks in what is supposed to be a deep quarterback draft class. Now, again, JJ McCarthy is somewhat of a wild card. He could go back to Michigan. And again, NIL deals have changed the game. Like JJ McCarthy to me is a basic NFL starter. And so like him going back to school doesn't really move the needle for me. It just sucks for a team that needs a quarterback because there's one less option out there available for you to choose from. But if we're being honest, he's a college quarterback. So if I'm JJ McCarthy, similar to what I said about the Georgia quarterback when he won the national championship and they hadn't won it since 1980, bro, life doesn't get any better than that for you. You can do whatever you want, which is what he did, and he started getting into trouble, right? Disturbing the peace and, DUIs and all kinds of shit he was getting into. But that's the life of a king. You're a king when you win a national championship and your team, your program hasn't done it in almost 3 decades. You a king, bro. So if he would like to, and something else that scares me a little bit with JJ McCarthy, I'll say this and then we'll get to the social media maneuvers, is this mental thing he's got going on. I'm so happy that he's found bliss in meditation. And, we are in the biggest game of your career. And the team psychologist you're literally having a session with the team psychologist early stages of the 4th quarter. Like, That's great for your mental health. And I'm so glad you figured out what works for you. I don't know if I want my quarterback having to do that shit in the biggest game of our season, biggest game of your career, for you to be where you need to be mentally, for you to achieve Zen, right? I'm good. I'm good on JJ. Just off the strength of that, not to be an asshole, but I'm good on JJ McCarthy. Just off the strength of, hey, where's this man's mentals at if shit starts to go off the rails? Just a bit. Where's his mentals at? Because one of the to me, the requirements of being a quarterback is being mentally tough. Shit's gonna go bad at some point. I don't give a damn how good you are. Shit's gonna go bad at some point, whether it's at the very beginning, if you're Peyton Manning in your first season, whether you're Patrick Mahomes and shit just starts off for you lovely, but then you have that rude awakening of, hey, bro, we ain't gonna keep letting you chuck it deep. You're gonna have to check it down. Remember 2 years ago when Mahomes was throwing all these interceptions and was like, you're gonna struggle at some point. How mentally tough are you? We see Josh Allen go through it almost every other week. How mentally tough are you? I don't know about JJ McCarthy, man. I worry just a little bit. Anyway, I digress. Let's see what y'all talking about. Got a super chat here from King of the Bluegrass. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, King of the Bluegrass. Writes, if Chicago keeps the head coach, that would be a hint that they are keeping Fields, right? Not necessarily, but I would like to think that that would be a package deal. I would tend to agree with that assessment. If they don't move on from Eberflus, probably means they're going to hold on to their offensive coordinator. And if they're going to hold on to their OC, you're going to give Fields another shot in the same offense and run it back and see how it goes, right? So I think, and that's why I said the longer this plays out, the less likely it is they're going to move on from Eberflus. And if they don't move on from Eberflus, then I think it's less likely, because where's the psychological sense in getting a new quarterback and marrying him to a coach that could only be here for a year? That's what they did to Justin Fields. I mean, it was bullshit, right? They drafted Fields knowing good and well that they were probably going to fire both the head coach, Ryan Pace, and the head coach, or the GM, Ryan Pace, and the head coach, Matt Nagy. And that's what they did. And now Fields has to start all over with a brand new head coach, brand new system, scheme. If you really want to give Justin Fields the best shot to be successful next year, if you're going to move on from the number 1 overall pick, then Luke Getsy probably needs to be back too. That's the offensive coordinator. So I think you're on to something there. It's not etched in stone because, again, Eberflus is a defensive coach. He's not offensive-minded guy. So really, he doesn't have any ties to Justin Fields in that regard. I think the more important decision would be offensive coordinator Luke Getsy, because if you're going to start over with another OC with Fields, you probably just need to start over altogether. Don't fry the man's brain again with another offensive coordinator. If you think he's starting to get comfortable, if you think this team is starting to get comfortable and they're starting to get into a rhythm and a groove, then run it back again and see what happens. Thank you for that super chat. Let's see where we are now. Jefferson Montenegro writes, Louie, this feels like when we go to the gas station, but a lucrative one in this case. We want our Skittles, Ben Johnson, but we also want everything else. This being the other candidates. So first of all, you have to do your due diligence. You may want a pack of Skittles, and if that's all you want, if that's all you craving, then go after the Skittles. But so if you want to go with the gas station analogy, babe, what's that gas station we went to, that big one, when we was traveling the last time? I've never been to a Buc-ee's before. Never. I've been on, traveling on the road, and I've seen it off on the side plenty of times, but we've never actually stopped at a Buc-ee's. So the last time we were traveling, we stopped at a Buc-ee's. When I tell you this shit is the mecca, the epicenter of gas stations, I'm telling you, it is the greatest gas station I've ever seen in my life. And this shit rivals some stores. Like, I might put Buc-ee's up against Walmart, and Buc-ee's might win. I might take Buc-ee's and put it up against Giant, and Buc-ee's might. It's that serious in that Buc-ee's. That's not a gas station. That's a lifestyle. They in there cutting meat right in front of your face. Roast beef. They got all kinds of snacks. They making the shit right there in your face. It's not a normal gas station, bro. The gas is just a reason to get you to stop. But that shit is like ninth on the level of importance of why you here. People don't go to Buc-ee's for gas. I went to that Buc-ee's, and I went in for a bag of cashews. That's what I wanted, and that's what Ben Johnson is. I wanted the cashews. I went in the Buc-ee's, and my mouth hit the floor with all the shit that they were offering. Maybe I don't want a bag of cashews. Now, obviously, I'm vegan, so I couldn't eat shit in there. So I ended up walking out with a bag of cashews, right? But I'm like, had I walked into a Buc-ee's 5 years ago, I'd have lost my mind. I'd have gained about 23 pounds. That's real talk. I would have bought everything in the damn store. It was that good. Okay. So I understand what you're saying. I understand the analogy you're trying to make, but you would be remiss if you just went in there, ignored everything else around, and just grabbed the tropical pack of Skittles and got out of there. You get those Skittles and you pick them up with the expectation of purchasing these so that if you want them, you don't have to double back to go get them. So you pick them up. But you take that lap around the store just to make sure that there's nothing else that you want to add, or maybe you want to put these Skittles back and get this instead. We'll see what they decide to do. We might be overrating Ben Johnson for them. And again, we know Ben Johnson as an offensive play caller. We don't know him as a leader of men. Just because you know X's and O's doesn't mean you're a great head coach. Understand that. We found that out. Well, not we. The Jets and the Dolphins found that out the hard way with Adam Gase. The Broncos, the Colts, and the Raiders found that out the hard way with Josh McDaniels. Just because you know X's and O's and you can scheme it up doesn't mean you're a good head coach. We see that happen all the time. So Ben Johnson might be excellent as a play caller, but he might not be the best man for the job in terms of rallying the troops and getting guys to buy in to one common goal. Or he might be. We'll see eventually. Comasel Brown writes, read an article today that the Chiefs want EB back bad to help get motivation, attention to detail back, but they can't unless we release EB. Interesting. I already told somebody, so my buddy asked me about EB. He's like, yo, where he gonna end up? I said, home. And when I say home to him, he knows what that means. Because, you know the famous Jiggery J line. They said I couldn't go back home. You know when I heard that? When I was back home. Anytime a coach gets fired from, previous employment, they just go back home. How many times has a Belichick disciple went somewhere to spread their wings only to get canned because they think they can implement the Patriot way somewhere else, except they're not Belichick, and they don't have Tom Brady. So they go there, they fail, and they come crawling back to Belichick. And you know Belichick can be like, man, come on back. It's all good, bro. That's what we see happen all the time. That's why we talk about it's a boys club, league, because you're going to hire your friend. Ain't no way your boy going to be out here on the streets without a job and you ain't going to give him some work. They may miss Eric Bieniemy and his accountability. That's all we heard. When we got him was he held guys accountable. Every day he held them accountable. He needs to go back to Kansas City. And that's what I told my boy. He's going back to Kansas City. I can't see anybody giving him an offensive coordinator job after what he just did in Washington. And not that he was all bad, but it wasn't good enough for me to say, you know what, I'm going to give you a shot with my young quarterback. Or I'm going to give you a shot. If you got a veteran, maybe. But I think he's going back to Kansas City. And that's where he belongs. That's where he belongs. And, sometimes, the beauty in that situation was Kansas City felt like we don't need Eric Bieniemy. Remember, Andy was like, bro, I'm going to give you one more year. Because remember, his contract had ran out and they gave him a 1-year deal because he couldn't find work. Nobody wanted to give him an opportunity to be a head coach or an offensive coordinator. So Andy was like, hey, I'm going to give you one more chance here. But you got to go after this year, bro. I got people like Matt Nagy, who, again, another guy that went somewhere else, won NFL Coach of the Year in 2018 and then flamed out and came back home after that, right? Andy took him back in. That's what you do. And now Matt Nagy's like chomping at the bit to get another opportunity to be an offensive coordinator. And Andy's like, yo, I got dudes waiting in the wings that's ready to get what you got, which is the offensive coordinator title. So I'm going to let you have it one more time, but after this, you got to go. It's almost like somebody saying, hey, man, when I let you stay here, you told me you was going to be here for no longer than 6 months, bro. It's been a year and a half. Like, my wife is like, you got to go, man. So, like, I can let you stay for another 2 weeks, but after this, man, I'm sorry, right? Guess what? You were paying half of the mortgage. They thought they could do it without you. You leave. All of a sudden, they struggling financially. You go out on your own, and it's everything that you thought. This is why you didn't have your own place in the first place, because you're like, not ready for this shit. I need a roommate. So you want to come back, and they like, bro, we'd love to have you back. They needed to realize, damn, we need Eric Bieniemy more than we thought we did. So I don't know if that's true. What you're telling me is true, but if it is, good. He needs them and they need him, and that's where he should be. I don't think he's a head coach in this league after seeing him this year, after how, players weren't on board with what he was doing. And, some of that sucks for him because he came into a situation with players who were doing it one way. And he came in and disrupted all of that. It's different when you're the head coach than when you're the offensive coordinator and you're making all of the decisions. And so it may not have gone the way that it probably should have in Washington, but the results at the end of the day, everything that happened in the offseason, everything that was happening in the summer with the whole somebody went to Rivera and complained to him about Eric Bieniemy, yada, yada, yada. All of that goes away if Sam Howell has a ridiculous year, Washington wins 10 games and makes the playoffs. All that shit goes away. Nobody cares about none of that shit. But that's not what happened. So, anyway, I digress. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being, thank you for doubling up. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, I watched a game breakdown of Drake May today. Guess what I saw? 6'4" Sam Howell. Hashtag NHO run it back. Somebody said this last night, and I haven't done my due diligence, so I can't confirm nor deny this, but somebody said that the biggest difference between the two of them, obviously, take the height and the measurables out of the mix, is the fact that he's already making checks, setting the protections, and adjusting at the line of scrimmage, which is something that Sam wasn't really doing, right? He's already doing that at a high level coming into the league. if that is in fact the case, if he was given the free reins to do that in college, and he's gotten comfortable enough to the point that when he gets to the NFL, he'll be working closely with the center, but he'll be able to make his own checks and adjustments, slide protection. One of the biggest things for a quarterback, a young quarterback to start, is can he protect himself? Right? Like if you're a running back and you're young and you want to get on the field, the fastest way to do that is to be able to protect the quarterback on third downs. If you can do that and understand protections and when you're needed and when you're not needed and make yourself eligible when you're not needed, you can get on the field very quickly. If you're a young quarterback, the last step to getting on the field, because when you're young, they want to throw you out there anyway. But if we can't trust you to see the free hitter coming off the edge and slide protection to the left, if we can't trust you to see that pre-snap, and you're putting yourself in harm's way, we can't put you on the field. Right? We can't. I mean, you can get the center to set the protections, but we want the quarterback to be able to take command of the offense and be able to do those things. See the blitz coming and make a side adjustment. If that's true, what I've been told by somebody is Drake May's doing that already. If that's true, that elevates him over Sam Howell. But again, I got to watch. I'm going to be honest with you. I thought we had our guy, so I didn't watch Drake May at all this year. Like when I used to watch Sam Howell, I was going out of my way because I knew we were going to need a quarterback. So I was going out of my way to watch Sam Howell. We get a lot of ACC football around here. That doesn't mean I'm trying to consume it. Okay. So I was swatting away Drake May. Like, I don't need that. I got one. I got a UNC quarterback already. I'm good. So now I got to actually go watch him. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for super chat. Greatly appreciate you. King of the Bluegrass says, put your coat back on, Lou. It's cold out them doors, man. It's real cold out there, man. I don't know if it's safe to go out there right now. Check back with me in about 4 months from now when we talking about post-draft and what the Commanders did. That'll tell me if I need to go outside or not. But in all jest, like seriously, in all seriousness, I find it hard to believe that Washington won't take a quarterback. I find that very hard to believe as we sit here on January the 9th. Before anything's been done other than firing Ronald Rivera and putting together this advisory committee. No hires have been made. Nothing has been done in terms of, cleaning out the rest of the staff, the front office. All those guys are still there technically. I find it hard to believe that they won't look to upgrade the most important position in the sport this offseason. I find that hard to believe right now. But we'll see, right? Coach Kev, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Coach Kev writes, remember way back at the start of the season, I predicted that this train might jump the tracks. Logan Thomas, Leno, AG, Cam Curl, Curtis were all people I said may be gone. Draft O-line first, go QB in the second. Thoughts? So, again, you're in a position that you may not find yourself in again. Drafting a second-round quarterback essentially puts you right back to where you were before, because I viewed Sam Howell as a second-round pick. I know everybody's going to say he's a fifth-rounder, but if we didn't have Carson Wentz, Washington already said they would have taken him in the second round. To me, he was a second-round quarterback. So if you don't take a first-round quarterback and you decide to take one in the second round, one, who is this second-round quarterback? I mean, Penix could, after the performance, we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but we've already talked about it. After that performance, he looks more like a second-round quarterback. But I can't state this enough. when you look around the NFL landscape, if you're looking for successful, high-level successful quarterbacks, not really good quarterbacks, I'm talking about the elite upper echelon, best of the best in the NFL. When we start making a list, when we're talking about Mahomes, we're talking about Burrow and Herbert and Allen and Jackson and those guys. And Hurts has pushed himself into that conversation. He had a step back year this year. He's not been as good as he was last year, clearly, which is why I always say, show me again. And he's shown me enough for me to feel like he belongs in that conversation, despite the turnovers. Hurts is the only guy that is not a first-round pick. Of all those quarterbacks I just named, when you're talking about the best of the best in the NFL, you're talking about first-round quarterbacks. I'm not telling you it is mandatory that you get your quarterback in the first round, but what I am telling you is getting your quarterback in the first round gives you the best shot to find a guy that can be elite in this league. That is what I am telling you. We've seen second-round quarterbacks be successful. Andy Dalton, Derek Carr. I just brought up Jalen Hurts. We've seen third-round quarterbacks be successful. Russell Wilson, right? We see Dak Prescott is a fourth-round pick. Kirk Cousins is a fourth-round pick. You don't have to get your quarterback in the first round. But if you want one of those elite dudes, chances are you probably need to get them in the first round, is what I'm telling you. What Brock Purdy is doing is phenomenal. And those come along once every 15 to 20 years. He might be the next Tom Brady. Who knows? But if that were the case, if people were finding guys in the 6th, 7th round every year, then we wouldn't have a shortage of quarterbacks in this league right now. You wouldn't have to have your season come down to whether Taylor Heineke or Desmond Ridder can win you a ball game at the end of a season. That wouldn't be the case. So trust me when I tell you, if you're thinking about taking a second-round quarterback, you might as well stick with Sam Howell, because it really doesn't make that big of a difference. If you're serious about finding an elite franchise quarterback, again, you have to assess that guy and vet him, and you have to feel like this is the guy. Then you should take him in the first round. All of those guys that you named that could be gone, we've talked about that. Like I said, understand that when this thing changes and it shifts over and we start this thing anew, understand that there will be a purge. And a lot of your favorite Commanders / Redskins won't be here. And a lot of y'all are like, yeah, we fine with that. They ain't won shit. Okay, I just wanted y'all to know. As long as you good with that, we move and we forge forward. Let's see. Niners fan writes, I'm still high on Penix, but he missed way too many throws yesterday. But all of a sudden, people are saying he's not a first-round pick after one bad game. I don't agree with it. You were one of the people that were touting him, and like I don't see the difference between him and Jaden Daniels and some of the top guys in the draft. And I was like, I don't know about all of that. But, you know, I've always said this. You can get away with a lot of shit out there on the left coast. And you being out on that left coast, I'm assuming you see a lot of Michael Penix, and you're like, you guys on the East Coast don't know what you're missing. And I'm like, no, I know what you're insinuating we're missing. I don't think we're missing a damn thing, because they don't play no defense out there. Outside of like Utah, don't nobody play no defense in the Pac-12. All right. Every now and again, you'll get one of those teams like Oregon State or somebody that has a crazy year defensively, but not Oregon State. I'm thinking about Oklahoma State. Don't nobody play no defense in the Pac-12, right? So he went to USC and put up like 50 in a shootout, right? When they play Oregon twice, we talking about 38, to 34 both times. Like, ain't no defense being played out there. These are the best teams you have to offer in that conference, and they don't have any resistance defensively. So he was allowed to do the shit that a lot of Pac-12 quarterbacks that are of any note do. I said going into that game, I wanted to see him against the best defense he's going to have seen in his collegiate career, and he did what I thought he was going to do. I didn't think it would be that bad, though. He was awful last night. Awful. He looked scared. He looked skittish. The moment looked to be too big for him. And then to top it off, the one thing that I didn't want to see happen for him was any injury of any kind. He had the ankle and then he had the ribs. And I'm like, bro, the one knock on you right now is you can't stay healthy. Now, he finished the game, so he showed toughness, but that's the last thing we wanted to see. Last thing. One game doesn't make or break you, but boy, does it do a lot for the perception of where you belong in the pantheon of quarterbacks and where you belong in the draft. Does go a long way because people put a lot of stock into the level of competition. I do. I can't speak for anybody else. I don't care what you just did against South New Mexico State. Go score 6 touchdowns, throw for 6 touchdowns, 422 yards, and go 34 for 37 against Southwest New Mexico State. That's great. That's lovely. Okay. Go beat up on Colorado, right? Go beat up on Deion's boys, throw 5 touchdown passes in that game and have fun, right? Go do that. That's great. They don't play any defense. I want to see what happens when you actually play a team that's going to put up resistance. That happened in this game, and you saw him play his worst game. That's not good. Not a large enough sample size for me to say, but when he played against this tough defense, look what he did. It ain't enough of those on his resume. That's the problem, is that this was one of the few opportunities you were going to see Michael Penix Jr. against an elite, top-notch defense, and this is what he does. That's going to be a question that's held over his head throughout this process. Fair or unfair? That's just how this goes. Had he played in the SEC and there were 3 or 4 more games you could point to, 2 of which were on the road in tough environments against quality defenses, and he played well, you could say, hey, look, this one was a rough one. But I still go back to the regular season game on the road at Texas A&M, or I go back to a game early in November on the road at Georgia, and look what he did in that game. You can't do that. There aren't any of those for him. I mean, if you want to count Oregon, knock yourself out. Be my guest. I don't. Niners fan, right? So you can't tell me Penix isn't better than May or Daniels. I'd like to see what those two would have done against Michigan's defense. I can't imagine it would have been a lot better. I don't know what they would have done. I can tell you that Jaden Daniels has played against some good defenses in his career at LSU. I can tell you that. He plays against Bama's defense every year, right, that he was at LSU. Excuse me. He's playing against some quality defenses. Florida's defense, not always great, but it's NFL level talent that he's going up against. I don't know how they would have fared. My assumption, though, is with some of those easy look like bro, that 4th and 7, Odunze can't be any more wide open. There's a bench route to start the 4th quarter, and he just airmails it over his guy's head. Like, these are clean pockets, open receivers, and he's just missing. Like, I'd like to think that Drake May and Jaden Daniels could hit open receivers when they're open. I'd like to think that, but you never know, right? The pressure of the game could have gotten to them too. Who knows? But again, only time will tell. He did take his team to that level, to that point. He did elevate that program, and that counts for something. That counts for something. King of the Bluegrass. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. King of the Bluegrass writes, awful. Failed the test miserably. That he did. He didn't pass the test. He failed, but I put this out earlier in a video, and I talked about this yesterday on the post-game show, on the recap. And I chopped it up for some of you who are allergic to long-form content. I chopped it up and put it out in a smaller package. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he still can't go in the first round. I said this yesterday. But here's what he effectively ended the conversation of. And this is what he had a chance to do yesterday. There are three names that are being mentioned when we talk about first-round quarterbacks. There are three names that have separated themselves from the rest of the pack. Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels. Okay. Michael Penix Jr., with the game he put together against Texas, if he would have coupled that with another massive performance on that stage against that defense, what he would have effectively done is said, hey, it's four of us. It ain't three of them. It's four of us. When you mention Caleb Williams, when you mention Drake May, when you mention Jaden Daniels, don't forget about me. Add me to that list. You could put me at the back of that list if you like, but we are foursome now. When you mention those three, mention my name too. That's what he had a chance to do yesterday. And with his performance, it's just three dudes. You aren't in that conversation. You don't get to put your name with those three guys. That was your chance to put your name with those three guys. You failed that test and you missed out on that opportunity. That's what I think effectively happened in that game. Not that he still can't be a first-round pick. All it takes is one team to fall in love with him. And I've already brought this up and I've already said this and made it abundantly clear. There are a lot of teams that need quarterbacks that aren't drafting in the top 10. The Raiders need a quarterback. The Broncos need a quarterback. The Steelers could be in the hunt for another quarterback. I mean, the Falcons are a top 10 team. They need a quarterback. If I'm Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield's cool, but am I sold on Baker to the point where I'm not willing to draft another young quarterback? Because clearly Kyle Trask ain't it. We could go on and on and on. There are always teams looking for a young quarterback. So the Vikings need a quarterback. If they're not going to bring, and they're a veteran team, I would like to think, but that they could not be a veteran team, right? They purged half of the veterans last year. They could finish the job this year, and they could start over, and they could be looking for a quarterback. They got a decision to make on whether they bring back Kirk Cousins or not, who's a free agent. So there's a lot of teams that could use a quarterback. He could still end up in the first round. But what he effectively did was he ended that conversation of, hey, it's four of us. Don't forget about me. Let's see. Cam G writes, Louie, would you be interested in Mike Vrabel being Washington's next head coach? No, I would not be interested in that. I like Mike Vrabel a lot, and I like what he did with the Tennessee Titans, but I don't love Mike Vrabel as a head coach. I like him a lot, though, and I admire what he's been able to do. And he's one of those dudes that over the years won my respect because I didn't think much of him initially as a coach. And as I watched his body of work over the years, he simply just knows how to get it done. But again, I'm not interested in that. And I don't necessarily love how things went with Tennessee. And I don't love the fact that he went behind his general manager's back and got him fired. Now, maybe that general manager needed to be fired after some of the roster moves that were made and how things went down. Maybe he did do a disservice to Mike Vrabel and made Vrabel's job a lot harder, which he did by moving on from A.J. Brown and trading him. But I just don't like the fact that that went down the way that it did, right? That's some drama that I don't need. I don't want any parts of that. And I just think he's a solid coach. I think you can do better than Mike Vrabel. But you put him in the right situation, I think he can be very, very effective. And he can help somebody. I'm looking for something else. First of all, I'm looking for an offensive-minded guy. So I have a preference. But if I'm going to go defensive-minded, I'm looking for something young, dumb, and hungry. So it'll be Mike McDonald, right? Before it, because, again, I'm looking for somebody that hasn't been tainted by the Patriots or, Vrabel was a linebackers coach with the Texans before he got the job with the Titans. And I'm looking for somebody that's clean. Like he was with Michigan and Baltimore, 2 winning programs. And now he's getting an opportunity. Let's see what the young fella can do, right? I'm open to that, but I would prefer an offensive-minded guy. Y'all know where I stand. King of the Bluegrass. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. King of the Bluegrass writes, guys were wide open on the other side of the field and he wasn't looking. Pressure got to him mentally. Can't have it. It's not only that, because there are times where you just don't see it, right? As a quarterback, whether pressure is there or not, you just don't see it. As fans, we're at home. The game's moving slow for us because we're not in it. We're not with a clock in our head that says, hey, get rid of it within 2.8 seconds. That's not what we're doing. We at home, we have the liberty of watching the replay, seeing a guy streaking up the sideline wide open, but he was never working front side. He was always working backside, or he was never working backside. He was always working front side. My thing was, who's your bread and butter? Who have you gone to in critical situations all season long? That would be like Joe Burrow not throwing to Justin Jefferson or throwing to Jamar Chase when he was at LSU, making his run through the playoffs. In a critical situation, I'm not going to look for them 2 dudes who I've rolled the entire year, who have killed it for me. I'm going to look for the 3rd or 4th option at receiver instead. Like, what are we doing right now? Odunze is your guy. So if I get into a tight jam or I get into a critical situation, I'm looking for one. What are we doing right now? And he was open a lot of the night. That's the problem. Is this they're forgetting about the best player on Washington's offense, and he's not even looking for him. That was the problem I had. And when he was open, he still was missing him. So there was a lot there to digest. Let's see. Steel City, right? I was told there were going to be like 10 job openings this year. Only 6 so far. Who told you 10? 10 that's a robust number. That's a third of the league, bro. Ain't no way. 10 is like a year in which is a bloodbath. Like everybody's getting fired at once. Normally the number is somewhere between 6 and 8. If you get to 9, whoo, that's a crazy offseason, right? 10 is crazy. 10 would have meant the Steelers didn't win another game and they moved on from Mike Tomlin. The Patriots said to hell with Bill Belichick. The Bears said we're done with Matt Eberflus, right? That'll get you to 9 right there. The Titans would have had to done what they did with Vrabel, move on from him, which I didn't see coming. And then you'd have to have one more firing that you didn't see coming, like New Orleans moving on from Dennis Allen, right? Had they lost to the Falcons, they move on from Dennis Allen. Or you would have had to have a situation where the Bucks win and they're in against Carolina and they go to Carolina and lose and they decide to move on from Todd Bowles. You would have needed something like that, which we just didn't see coming. The number was always 6 to 8. So I don't know who told you 10, but that was a pretty big number. Pretty big now, because we when we started speculating, we said, hey, 3 of the 4 coaches in the NFC South could get fired, but the likelihood of that happening slim and none, right? Slim and none. Once we saw the Panthers move on from their coach, we knew that the Falcons, there was a chance that they could move on from their head coach. Bucks, if they missed the playoffs, maybe they move on from Bowles. Saints, if they would have flamed out, maybe they move on from Dennis Allen. But those 2 are still employed That's the only way you would have gotten to maybe 10. You know, you would have needed some guys that just didn't finish strong in the team said we got to move on. And that would have had to include Tomlin as well, your guy. Not happening. We'll take a couple more and then we'll get out of here. Steel City writes, I wouldn't say the Titans are a terrible job. They've got a promising young quarterback and a high draft pick at 7. They've got building blocks like Jeff Simmons and Al Shire on D. You didn't name one offensive player other than the quarterback, and you don't know about the quarterback. That's a very small sample size that we got a Will Levis. We like what we saw, but go back and look at the numbers in those games that they won with. Like it's the numbers aren't pretty, but he found a way to win, right? We got to see this on a much larger scale with Will Levis before we crown him. Derrick Henry's nearing the end of his career, and he's a huge part of what they've been. So now you're turning that page, potentially. They don't have any receivers. DeAndre Hopkins is still good, but, I mean, at this point of his career, he should be playing for a contender, not for the Tennessee Titans. They don't have anything else other than DeAndre Hopkins. Okonkwo is a guy you could have named at tight end. He's really good, and I really like him a lot. But there's not a lot there, dude. Like, Jeffrey Simmons is definitely a building block, and I like Harold Landry when he's healthy. Al Shire is cool, but again, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to that roster. Could I have exaggerated their demise? Maybe. I don't think I have, because they play in a pretty bad division, so that's going to give them a shot. But as I say that, the Colts went 9-8, the Texans won the division at 10-7, and the Jags just missed out on the division at 9-8. So I say that their division is bad, but is it really? They're the worst team in it right now. So I don't know. I just don't think that's a very attractive job. The top 7 pick is cool, but I don't see the Titans job being super attractive right now. For me, anyway. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, don't let LB off the hook tonight, Lou. Oh, I'm not. It's not just him, though. Nobody's safe tonight, but LB is definitely getting a smoke. I'm ready. Like, I'm back, man. I'm in rare form now. Like, listening to Josh Harris yesterday, that shit reinvigorated me. It's crazy because we knew we were free, right? It's like Juneteenth. For the slaves that knew they were free, that's a great feeling. But there were slaves that didn't know they were actually free when they were free. And watching Josh Harris's press conference yesterday was like me getting the news that, hey, bro, you're free. You don't got to do that no more. Like, that was the first time where I actually said, oh, my God, this is happening, bro. This shit is new. It's fresh. It's different. We ain't going back to the way the things used to be no more. You can't tell me nothing right now, bro. It's on. I'm on 10 tonight. 12 maybe. I might have to turn myself down and remind myself that, hey, you're not in the playoffs. They are. So turn it down just a bit. So I might not be at 12. I might be at 10, but I ain't going much lower than that. You ain't got to worry. You ain't got to worry about that. I'm definitely going hard in the paint tonight. Let's go ahead and get to let's get to the final segment of the show. I'm gonna take this last comment from Red Wolf 17, who writes, Ian Cunningham and Adam Peters interview tomorrow. Do you see Washington locking up a GM by this week? I think you'd be hard pressed to see them make a decision this week. I think the decision will be next week, because again, you can't interview a head coach in person until the 22nd of January. That to me is your deadline, right? So I'm thinking the head coach hire, the the GM or the head of football operations hire takes place somewhere in that 18th, 19th range. Because the 22nd is a Monday. They're not going to make that hire over a weekend. So it's not going to be on the 21st or the 20th. The 19th, if you want to sneak it in right before the end of the week. But I think it's more of a Wednesday, Thursday type of deal. So the 18th or the 17th is when I think you'll see them make a move. So next Wednesday, possibly next Thursday, is when I think they make a decision on the GM, because I think they want to be ready by the time the 22nd rolls around to start interviewing head coaching candidates. Like, I don't think they want to waste any time on this. They want to get straight to the shits, be in a position to strike while the iron's hot. They feel like they have a very attractive job, and they want to get to the best candidates so that they feel like they've done their due diligence and they can pick from the pick of the litter, right? So if that's your thinking and you want your head of football operations to be a part of that process, which I'm assuming is definitely a must, you got to get it done by the 22nd. I don't think this week is mandatory. Next week, though, I think is when it has to be done by, and I think they'll have it done by next week. Let's finish up the show with garbage time. And national championship is in the rearview mirror. Michigan pulls away late, wins 34-13 over Washington. Again, I've said this a bunch of times, and I did last night numerous times. That was a 20-13 game with 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So it wasn't like this game was a blowout start to finish. But once Michigan scored that touchdown to make it 27, it felt like it was insurmountable. That they weren't coming back. They hadn't scored a touchdown in the second half. They weren't moving the football effectively. They were out of sorts. Penix wasn't making nearly the amount of throws, decisions, and the things that we had saw the previous week. He just wasn't the same guy, clearly, right? And that we saw that from the start of the game. And there just wasn't any way they were going to come back unless Michigan helped them, doing the shit that they did the week prior against Alabama with fumbles and things of that nature on punts and special teams imploding. That anything short of them turning it over, I didn't see any way Washington was going to come out of that thing victorious. But here's what I do want to bring up. The biggest takeaway clearly is going to be Michael Penix Jr., his performance and what that does to his draft stock. I've already talked about that. I put out a video talking about that specifically. And I've already kind of regurgitated a lot of that to you here today, but I went into greater detail and depth yesterday. So if you want to see that, the video is already up. We already know that that's essentially taking him out of any conversation of being in the top 3, right? He could be the 4th quarterback selected in this draft. I don't know if that changes. I think he's the 4th best quarterback in this draft class. And again, I haven't done my homework. I might do my work and I might say, nah, I think he's the 2nd or 3rd best quarterback in this draft. I highly doubt that, though. I highly doubt that. He's probably right where he's supposed to be as the 4th best quarterback. And what does that mean? It could mean what it meant for Will Levis last year, that you're a 2nd-round pick. And that's okay, right? Some of the bigger takeaways, Jim Harbaugh, I think he's done in Michigan. I think he did what he set out to do, which was bring that program back to prominence. He did something no other coach could do, which was beat Ohio State. He did that. Took him a while now, right? Took him a long time, but he finally did it. And he's leaving them in a position that they haven't been in quite some time, and that's in a position of dominance. They run the Big Ten. They've been the Big Ten champions the last 3 years, right? Or was it 2 years? Feels like 3 years. They've beaten Ohio State the last 3 years. So I would assume they've been the Big Ten champions the last 3 years. But whatever the case may be, they've beaten Ohio State 3 years in a row. They've gone to the playoff 2 years in a row. They just won a national championship. There's not much more for him to do there, right? I think he's been itching to get back into the NFL ranks. I think he sees himself as a pro coach. One of my biggest takeaways is that he just coached his last game at Michigan. Something else to consider as a big takeaway is that Michigan has a ton of talent, NFL talent. The corner that we saw out there, the nickel, same Restrill, who I love. I think that the running back, I always forget his damn name. Edwards. He looks like, and Blake Corum, clearly an NFL running back. Here's what I think is going to ultimately happen. I think Edwards is going to go back to school. And I don't think it's a smart move. But he's been stuck behind Blake Corum this entire time. And I think he sees next year as an opportunity for him to come from behind the shadows and be the guy. And that's not what it's about at the running back position. To hell with being the guy. It's about getting to the league with as much tread on your tires as possible and getting to your rookie contract as soon as you can to get to the bread and the bag as quickly as you can. Because we know once you hit 30, once you even get close to 30, they're ready to discard you like yesterday's trash. You should be trying to get to the league as quickly as possible. And with you having shared the backfield with a guy that was a workhorse, there's a lot of tread on your tires, bro. I would leave right now. But he doesn't have to do that. I don't know if he will do that. But I felt like there were a lot of guys that could potentially have made themselves some money yesterday. And Michigan's got a lot of talent on that squad. A lot. Adunze is a dog. That stood out to me. He was open a lot last night. I'm still trying to put my finger on exactly who he is at the next level. I'd have to watch more tape because I don't think he's a speed demon by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't think that matters. I think he knows how to make plays on the football. I think he knows how to use his frame, and I think he's fast enough to be a playmaker. He looks like the real deal to me. That was another huge takeaway for me because I really hadn't watched him closely this year. I've watched him in some situations make some big plays at the end of ball games when they needed it. But to see him in that environment against that defense with that secondary and to see him open a ton last night, he had his fair share of battles that he didn't win, but he was also open a ton and could have gotten the football a lot more and still had 5 catches for like 70 or 80 something yards. So he looks legit. Anyway, I digress. Y'all get out of here. Hopefully y'all can join me later on tonight along with the other 3 members of the NFC East Super Friends. It's going to be lit tonight. I'm on one. I'm just letting y'all know right now. They're going to talk shit. They're going to try to clown me for new high order. They're going to try to talk about our team is trash. LB's angle is going to be y'all already, your locker room is clean, all that. Look, bro, none of that shit matters to me, bro. You can't steal my shine. You can't knock off my high. You can't kill my high. I'm going in on those clowns tonight. I'm going in. Anyway, we'll have to revisit the Buc-ee's conversation. I see a lot of y'all talking about Buc-ee's in the comment section. Buc-ee's is some serious shit. My life has been forever changed walking into a Buc-ee's. We'll revisit that at some point. But in any event, y'all get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Hopefully you'll spend a little bit of it. I'm not telling you got to spend all of it, but hopefully you'll spend a little bit with a little bit of it with us later on this evening. And if not, I'll see y'all tomorrow. All right. Y'all take care. God bless. And as always, good night.